Yasodanandana Raja Jana Ranjana Yasodanandana Raja Jana Ranjana Amunatira Vanda Chari Yanatira Vanda Chari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Vihari Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada. Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada. Jai Shri Shri Radha Govindari Krishna Balaram Ragiraj Shri Shri Goni Chai Ki Srila Prabhupada Ki Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai Jai Gaura Premanandi. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. I'm reading today from the Srimad Bhagavatam, text 20. Vishvam Atmakatam Vyanjan Kutasto Jagat Ankuraha Svate Jasya Pibhaktiram Atma Prashvapanam Tamaha Vishwamatmakatam Vyanjan Kutasto Jagad Ankuraha Svate Jasya Pibhaktiram Atma Prashvapanam Tamaha Vishwamatmakatam Vyanjan Kutasto Jagat Ankuraha Svate Jasya Pibhaktiram Atma Prashvapanam Tamaha. Somebody else? Thomas. Ladies? Oh. Vishvam, the universe, Atmagatam, contained within itself, Vyanjan, manifesting, Kutashta, unchangeable, Jagat Anukura, the root of all cosmic manifestations, Svatejasha, by its own effulgence, Abhibat, swallowed, Tiram, dense, Atmara Prashvapanam, which had covered thee, Mahatattva, Tamaha, darkness. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki. Translation. Thus, after manifesting variegatedness, the effulgent Mahatattva, which contains all the universes within itself, which is the root of all cosmic manifestations, and which is not destroyed at the time of annihilation, swallows the darkness that covers the effulgence at the time of dissolution. Fourth, since the Supreme Personality of Godhead is ever existing, all blissful and full of knowledge, His different energies are also ever existing in the dormant stage. Thus, when the Mahatattva was created, it manifested the material ego and swallowed up the darkness which covered the cosmic manifestation at the time of dissolution. This idea can be further explained. The person at night remains inactive, covered by the darkness of night. When he is awakened in the morning, the covering of night, or the forgetfulness of the sleeping state, disappears. Similarly, when the Mahatattva appears after the night of dissolution, the effulgence is manifested to exhibit the variegatedness of this material world. Yes. Om Bhagyan Dhamarandasya Jananjana Salakaya Chakshwan Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave. Actually, there's a verse in the Srimad Bhagavad Gita that explains this, that Krishna says, the whole cosmic order is under me, and under my will it is automatically manifested, and again, and under my will it is annihilated at the end. So we see this in this particular section of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Krishna explains how the material world is created at certain intervals, then destroyed again by His will. Some people wonder, what is the purpose of creation? What is the purpose behind this creation? And we read in the Vedic literature that creation is a chance for the conditioned souls to enjoy matter. Prabhupada mentions many times that in one sense it's the conditioned souls that create this material universe, because they have this desire to want to enjoy independently of the Supreme Lord. So Krishna creates this universe, but also we see it provides a chance for them to understand their real constitutional position as eternal loving servants of Krishna and gain liberation from the reincarnation cycle. So those conditioned souls who don't catch up the constitutional truth are again merged into the Mahatattva at the time of annihilation. And then after Brahma's night, they come into creation and they take up their respective positions according to their karma, or the activities they performed in the previous creation. So if we see this from material creation, Krishna's plenary partial expansion, Mahavishnu, he enters into the Mahatattva, the total material energy. I mean, he is, in a sense, the architect behind these nice material creations. Now he lies down in the waters of the causal ocean, and while sleeping, all the universes are generated along with his breathing. They just come out. Yes. And again, as he expands as the Garbhodakshayi Vishnu, he enters into each universe. He creates Brahma and Shiva and the demigods for the maintenance of the universe. You know, in the spiritual sky, there's this incredible effulgence of Brahman, which is just spread all around. And it is said that the whole system is just dazzling with spiritual light. It's actually, this Brahman effulgence is emanating from Krishna, Krishna's effulgence. So after annihilation, the Mahatattva, it's assembled in some corner of this vast, unlimited spiritual sky. Actually, it's described as like a little cloud. And within that little cloud, the Mahatattva, all the ingredients of material creation, including the conditioned souls, and also innumerable universes, are just existing. They're just assembled there. And then when Mahavishnu casts his glance, what happens? He impregnates the material sky with his glance, thus being electrified by the Lord's power. The material nature at once creates innumerable universes. It's amazing. And at this time, it's the Nitya Buddhas, the conditioned, eternally conditioned souls like us, are impregnated into the Lord's external energy, Maya, for, as Prabhupada mentions, rectification of their rebellious attitude towards their Supreme Father. Prabhupada says, you know, the government doesn't like to create a prison house. You know, prison houses are nasty places. But because some people have this tendency to break the law, to commit crime, then they have to create this prison house. So similarly, this material world is said to be like a prison house. And it's such a perfect prison house, Prabhupada mentions, that everyone is completely bound up by the material energy, but they think they're completely free. Yes. So they're bound up in this prison house of the material universe for rectification of this rebellious attitude they have towards Krishna. And although Krishna is the supreme director, I mean, he has the control of every minute detail of material activities. He's always sitting as described as neutral. Yeah. He actually has nothing to do with all these material activities. He simply glances over the material nature, activates it, that then everything is just carried out by his different potencies. This means that in reality, he himself does not create or destroy, but the material nature which he empowers acts by his desire. Thus everything moves by his will automatically. It's incredible. Some amazing things are going on simply by the magic wand of Krishna. Just by his raising of his eyebrows, he's simultaneously conducting all the affairs of both trillions of spiritual universes and millions of material universes simply by his desire. So powerful. Of course, he himself, he's simply enjoying his eternal blissful spiritual activities in the spiritual world. He's a supreme enjoyer. Sometimes Prabhupada gives the example of a high court judge. By his order, things are happening. People are being punished, people are being rewarded. But he personally has nothing to do with all this gain and loss. He remains neutral. You know, these Vedic literatures, the Bhagavad Gita talks about one day of Brahma, which is known as a kalpa, It's 1,000 cycles of 4 ages, or yugas. 4,320,000,000 years. And after this day of Brahma, there's an occasional annihilation of the universe. And, Lord Narayan, he lies down upon the bed of Anantashesha, and just absorbs the entire universe. The 3 planetary systems within himself, while Brahma is just busy sleeping. Then after Brahma's 100 years of life, I think it's 311 trillion, 40 billion years, I think it is. There's another annihilation, a total devastation of the whole universe, whereby the energy manifested by the Supreme Lord is again just wound up. It's just the whole universe is dismantled and just enters within himself. Amazing. And at both times, the Mahatattva, the material energy, and the jivas, they merge into the body of Mahavishnu. Now in the 12th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, there's a description of the annihilation of the universe, of the cosmos. Firstly, there's just no rain for 100 years, just total drought. And then the great fire of annihilation flares up, carried by the force of wind. It just burns throughout the universe. And the universe just glows like a burning ball of cow dung. And then comes the terrible winds of devastation, destruction, which blow for 100 years, covering the sky, the whole universe, with dust. And then comes the floods of rain for 100 years, causing the whole shell of the universe to fill up with water, causing just a single cosmic ocean. Yes. Thus, what happens is the entire cosmic manifestation is dismantled and becomes unmanifested by the force of time. Actually, it's interesting, there's a description in the Bhagavatam which describes the unmanifested stage of material nature. That there is no expression of words, no mind, no manifestation of the subtle elements, nor is there the modes of goodness, passion, or ignorance. There's no life air, no intelligence, nor any senses or demigods. There is no definite arrangement of planetary systems, nor is there nor are there present the different stages of consciousness. There's no ether, no earth, no fire, no sun, and the situation is like that of complete sleep or voidness. You can imagine that. This is annihilation, during which the energies which belong to the Lord disassemble by the force of time and are deprived of all their potencies, and they just merge together totally into the Mahatattva and remain there in one corner of the spiritual sky like a little cloud. Just in total, yes, suspended animation, waiting for the Lord to come and reactivate. So just as these clouds in the sky come into being, then are dispersed. This material universe is created and destroyed by the will of the Lord. So Prabhupada mentions here, similarly the conditioned souls. Oh no, he doesn't mention here, in another place. Conditioned souls are experiencing constant annihilation of their material bodies at the time of death, which are reborn again and again until they reach the final annihilation or liberation from the reincarnation cycle. You know, Prabhupada, in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna tells us that What is night for all beings is the time of awakening for the self-controlled. And the time of awakening for all beings is night for the introspective sage. Yes. So Prabhupada explains there's two classes of intelligent men. One is intelligent in material activities for sense gratification, and the other is introspective and awake in the cultivation of self-realization. Which means due to ignorance or self-realization, the materialistic man or persons remain always asleep, just dreaming how they can enjoy this material body, how they can enjoy this world, and they're always being frustrated in their plans for happiness. Whereas the learned sage remains always in an awakened state, feeling transcendental pleasure in the gradual advancement of spiritual culture, undisturbed by the dualities of happiness and distress. Yes. So just as this creation is sometimes manifested and sometimes unmanifested, sometimes we may be sleeping, as Prabhupada mentions here, and sometimes we may be awake. So we can think about that. I mean, similarly, living entities, sometimes they're aware of their eternal spiritual nature as eternal loving servants of Krishna, and sometimes they're just completely bewildered. Got no idea of who they are, what is the ultimate purpose behind this material creation, what is the ultimate purpose to this human form of life. Thus, we could say all their efforts in life have very little value and very little meaning. You know, when I look back on my life, I remember as a young teenager, I was very lost and confused, actually. Very lost and confused. And I wanted my life to have deeper meaning, some purpose. You know, I was trying to enjoy life in so many ways, just like everyone else. But within myself, I truly felt, something was missing. Many of you may have had this experience. You just get this feeling of emptiness in your life. I was living on the Gold Coast when I was a teenager, and sometimes I used to sit by the ocean, just watching the waves rolling in, thinking about life. A lot of people do that. They go down to the beach and they just sit there, staring out at the ocean, thinking about their life, or thinking about their problems. I was really searching for the answers. What's the formula for achieving ultimate happiness in life? What's my real purpose in life? And as I traveled around, I tried to gather some wisdom. And I began to realize, actually, I wasn't alone. There's so many people out there in the world who are lost and confused. Yeah, we meet them every day out there on Sankirtan, right? Yeah. I mean, just trying to be yourself is not as easy as it sounds. And the Bhagavad Gita explains why. Because in reality, we're not this temporary material body. We're eternal souls. Changing bodies, life after life, appearing in various species of life. And this has been going on for thousands of lifetimes. Therefore, due to this long association with this powerful, deluding material energy, our original spiritual nature and consciousness has been covered over and is lost. Therefore, after many lifetimes of searching, we may feel a call within ourselves to find a deeper meaning in our life. Trying to find your own true self. I think many of you may have had this experience. Did you find that, Pete? Feel the calling within yourself to find a deeper meaning in your life. I know for me, I truly felt this calling to find a deeper meaning in my life. Now, after many years of practicing this Bhakti Yoga, Krishna consciousness, I've been carried into this, you could say, an amazing lifestyle, which has changed my ways of thinking, changed my ways of viewing the world, viewing myself, viewing life itself. I mean, it's led into a destiny, you could say, unimaginable to that lost teenager sitting by the beach. Yes. I mean, every devotee has a story to tell, how they met the devotees, how they became a Hare Krishna devotee. You know. I mean, the question often comes to people's mind is, you know, does following a bona fide spiritual or religious path mean you have to become simply a blind follower? Yes. I mean, one thing we point out when answering such a question is who in this world is not a blind follower? I mean, in reality, there's so many things in this world that people just accept blindly, isn't it? You know, people follow traditions, they follow the social media trends, philosophies, scientific theories, cultures, various forms of worship. People also take up spiritual and religious paths without even understanding or questioning what's the goal or the end result of following this path. You know, many times people simply find themselves, you could say, going with the flow. You know, whatever seems in vogue, easy to follow. Yeah. So in Bhakti Yoga, we learn about the pitfalls of blind following. I mean, Krishna consciousness is so amazing that even if you take it up as a blind follower, you'll achieve incredible benefit. But then again, you may not last. This is why Krishna spoke Bhagavad Gita. So we can understand things properly using our intelligence in association with a bona fide spiritual master like Srila Prabhupada. Then our following is knowledgeable rather than simply blind. We can understand what is the goal, what is the end result. So this Bhakti Yoga, this Krishna consciousness, it's amazing. I mean, it's open to everyone to come and experience how true spirituality opens the door to an extraordinary life of transforming consciousness and awakening our natural love for Krishna and each other. You know, generally people know that God is great, but they do not know in detail how he is great. So this knowledge we're reading here about his creational activities and his opulences is required. Why? In order to increase our faith and our realization of his greatness and his supreme position. And this is why we see that studying Bhagavatam is supposed to be systematically done from the first to the 10th canto. So when you read about these devotional creational activities and realize his greatness and his supreme position, when you get to the 10th canto and start reading about his pastimes, you won't fall into the mistake of thinking that these pastimes are just material. So Krishna, he is the ultimate source of all spiritual material worlds. Everything emanates from him, even down to the minutest detail of this finely tuned universe is being controlled and maintained by him, simply by the power of his all-pervasive energies. Generally if you're a philosophically minded person, you naturally want to know about the origin of creation. Why was this world created? What is the origin of man? How did life come about? When we look at this universe, we see so much intelligent design, so much fine-tuning, so much so that conditions of the universe are sufficient to permit life. If conditions were a little different, life could not exist. So this strongly suggests that someone has arranged things in a certain way that everything can just work very nicely. The human body itself acts as a finely tuned machine, doesn't it? With its trillions of atoms all moving in symbiotic precision. I think it's estimated as something like 1 octillion atoms in a human body, which is about 10 to the 26 zeros atoms, all working in perfect symbiotic precision. And it's been estimated there may be as many as 200 trillion molecules just in a single cell, all executing thousands of coordinated reactions with precise timing. How such a complex structure could have come about. And all the planetary systems floating in space, maintaining the perfect orbits. If the sun was even to move a few degrees closer to the Earth, we'd all be frazzled. So we say, if there's intelligent design, there must be a designer, an intelligence or an intelligent being that makes everything work so perfectly, so systematically. The more we discover and think about the details of this physical world, the more we will realize that everything is purposely designed. Nothing happens by chance. There's so many theories around, the exploding chunk theory, that there was a chunk floating in space and it exploded and suddenly the whole universe was created. Prabhupada, in answer to that, he said, first we ask, where did the chunk come from? And does any order ever come out of explosion or chaos? So this definitely brings up the possibility of the existence of a creator, a supreme intelligence behind this ordered universe. It seems that the discoveries of science in the last 50 years, this is looking at from the scientific point of view, the philosophical point of view, we can see that there's something beyond this universe that's the ultimate cause. Why? Because nobody knows why this universe started, why it's finely tuned. Nobody knows how life started, or how the structure of the first cell started or came into existence. No one knows these things. All these things point strongly towards an element beyond nature, either a supreme creator or some unknown spiritual force. Therefore we see, as many scientists today are realizing, because there's no explanations that can be found to explain the physical world existing within this universe itself, has prompted them to look into a more philosophical understanding. Yes. And of course, following these bhakti teachings, we've all come to realize that trying to define this world using our flawed perception definitely isn't the best process for understanding things as they are. Now that we learn from the Bhagavad Gita, as humans, we can only possess partial knowledge because humans have these 4 defects. They make mistakes, they're subject to illusion, they have defective perception. We also have a cheating propensity. Humans have a cheating propensity, which means that humans have a tendency to speculate, concoct, misinterpret, create theories of their own, try to convince others that their theories are in fact proven. Now, I just heard a lecture by Srila Prabhupada who he gave the example of Charles Darwin. Now, everyone talks about Darwin's evolutionary theory. He's famous, right? Prabhupada said in this lecture, actually, it wasn't Darwin's theory at all. He stole it from the Padma Purana. Then he misconstrued it and he called it his own theory. He proved this Vedic aphorism that if we simply add our material logic and argument to this Vedic knowledge, what happens? It becomes different, and more different. It means you become completely confused. That's why we're continually advised to try and understand this Vedic knowledge in association with the Vedic academics, the Vedic acharyas, the Vaishnava acharyas. So according to the Vedanta, there is a realm of knowledge, a higher wisdom, which is beyond scientific knowledge and rationality. And ultimately, that is the Vedic knowledge. And this Vedic knowledge is, you could say, inconceivable, and it's mystical. It's very mystical. Because you can't simply understand it by empiric philosophical speculation, experimental knowledge, even through scholarship or material intelligence. The Vedas explain that only by following the process given by the bona fide spiritual master can you purify your consciousness, purify your intelligence, your mind. Then you'll receive direct enlightenment within the heart. Yes. So also to guide and educate us, Krishna has given us these Vedic literatures, which are originally spoken by him at the beginning of creation. Yes. So everything we want to learn, everything we have forgotten long ago, has its origin in the Vedas, which touch upon all aspects of creation. And the highest message of Vedic wisdom is that this human form of life, very, very precious gift, and it should be utilized to perfect human consciousness and realize the full meaning of life. Also, Bhagavad Gita, Krishna informs us that he is that mystical force that is the background of this cosmic manifestation. And what is that mystical force? It is time. Time. No one knows where time began. No one knows where it ends. But in factual calculation, the Vedas tell us that time has no beginning and end. Time is eternal. Now, sometimes we may see children on the seashore laboring hard to build beautiful castles of sand. But at the day's end, what happens? The tide comes in and washes all the castles away, doesn't it? So similarly, adults, they spend their lives building castles of worldly accomplishments in the sand of material existence. But at the dusk of life, at the end of life, the rising ocean of time will send its waves of death. Yes. Therefore, our bhakti scriptures, they advise us to wake up, realize the temporary nature of this world, and try to realize how valuable is this human form of life, which is meant for self-realization, preparing ourselves for the next life. So these Vedic texts, they actually warn us how this insurmountable time can imperceptibly overcome us. Actually, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati tells a story to illustrate this point. It's a funny story. It's about the richest frog in the world. You heard about the richest frog in the world? I'll tell you the story. There was this little frog, and he was hopping about his lake. He found a 50-cent coin, and he thought, I'm rich. I'm rich. What other frog in the world has as much money as me? I am the richest frog in the world. So one day, he was sitting on his 50-cent coin, bloated with pride. I'm the richest frog in the world. And he was thinking, now that I'm the richest frog in the world, let me do something for my fellow frogs. I'll become a famous frog. Actually, I'll become the king of frogs. Then he thought, what's the biggest problem that face my fellow frogs? And then he thought, it's these elephants. They come down to the lake to drink and bathe. And my God, that's one of the biggest disturbances to our fellow frogs. These elephants. Now that I'm the richest frog in the world, I will not tolerate this anymore. Just then, he heard the king's elephant coming down to the lake. He jumped out near the path and he called out, "Stop! Don't come any further to this lake. It's me, the richest frog in the world. Stop!" The elephant, he heard a little noise, he didn't really pick it up. He kept walking with his mahout, his elephant trainer. Frog, again he called out, "Stop! Don't come any further to this lake. It's me, the richest frog in the world." The elephant didn't hear it. He just kept walking. Then suddenly the frog, the richest frog in the world, he jumped from his 50-cent coin on the pathway to stop the elephant. It's a sad story, but the elephant, he didn't see him. And the big elephant foot, he stood on the frog. And that little frog, unfortunately, he died. He died. He left his body. So, similarly, just to illustrate this point, that people become so proud of their material advancement, their scientific advancement, the so-called advancement of materialistic culture and civilization, that they become blind to the passing of time. They lose perspective of the reality of life. Like this little frog, he thought he could stop the elephant. They imagine they can remain in this body and simply go on enjoying forever. That life is simply meant for eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow you die. And when you die, they put you in the ground. And that's it. Yes. Therefore, highly advised by our Vedic scriptures to wake up, discover the purpose, the vision, the plan of Krishna behind this wonderful creation, and learn how to act in accordance with his cosmic plan. You know, some philosophers, they even declare that this world doesn't even exist at all. That it's simply an illusion, a dream we will one day wake up from. But in Bhakti Yoga, Krishna consciousness, we have another perspective. We consider both ourselves, the soul, the world around us, to be both real and divine, the created energy of the Lord. But because this world and our life are temporary manifestations, we might call our experience of it dreamlike. Actually, the dream is just that we, the eternal soul, we actually identify and think we are this material body, and that this material world is separate from Krishna. I mean, ultimately, everything in creation, including ourselves, is related and connected to Krishna. To think otherwise is to be an illusion, is to be in this dreaming kind of state. It's only due to this influence of this powerful deluding material energy that we cut off our relationship with Krishna and we start viewing ourselves as independent. Simply focusing on our own talents, accomplishments, abilities, our own enjoyment in life and arrangements as a separate thing of ourselves. I mean, the whole thrust of Western civilization is to try and understand the self as separate from the Supreme Lord. And people just focusing on their own talents, their accomplishments, abilities. However, everything, the ultimate reality is everything has its source in Krishna. He is the intelligence of the intelligence, the ability in man, the prowess of, everything we can possibly achieve in life is by His mercy. So this self-realization includes understanding our relationship with this ever-changing temporary material world and our ultimate relationship with Krishna. Yes, they both go hand in hand. I just finished it. Hare Krishna. Does anyone have any questions I'd like to ask? Anyone? Okay.
Amazing class. Thank you very much. I was reading in Easy Journey to Other Planets that Prabhupada mentioned there is a time where there's partial I don't know how to say it properly, annihilation, partial, at the end of each day of Brahma. And then there's a complete annihilation of the cosmic manifestation.
Mm-hmm.
And so when there's a partial annihilation, like the topmost planets such as Brahmaloka, they are not. Yeah. So I was wondering if something like, what's the event, like when the whole cosmic manifestation is annihilated? Is there like an event, something that happens? Like, what's the difference?
The difference.
Yeah. Like, because at the end of
at the end of Brahma's life, even the whole is a total annihilation of the whole universe. Even Brahma he will leave and go back to Godhead. Even in the higher planets, like that. It's called that partial annihilation. They read about it in the Bhagavatam, how even the yogis, they leave their planets and they go to the higher planets that are not annihilated to survive. Whereas, it's at the end of that's after Brahma's night. It's called a partial annihilation, or it's called there's another word for it. What's the other word for it? But it's and there's there's partial and there's a total annihilation of the whole universe at the end of Brahma's day, not life. 100. So we've got 4,320 million years. We've got the partial annihilation. Then after Brahma's lifetime, 311 trillion 40 billion years, it's a total annihilation. Anyone else like to add anything to that? Stringer or?
I haven't read anywhere where it explains there's an event before the annihilation comes. But there must be some indication, because we see that the sages who are in Mahaloka, Janaloka and Tapaloka, they move up to Lord Brahma's planet before the start of a partial annihilation. So there must be some precognizance of that is going to happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Garuda Prabhu, Hare Krishna. The philosophy is so strong, and here it's so easy to feel in the temple, to feel like the frog, like, oh yeah, like this is just silly, don't worry about it, It's so obvious how small we are, but we take 3 steps outside the temple and someone takes your gamsha, and the world's ending, and so how do we remember our insignificance in a world where the mind is so disturbed and tells us over and over again how important we are?
I like when you go out in Sankirtan like that. Or you mean when you go out in Sankirtan, you and you're connecting with the world, you feel uncomfortable, or you can be disturbed.
I mean, so just even doing service, doing different things, so you get just going through the motions. We become overcome by feelings that we think and thoughts that we think are big.
Yeah.
But really, we're not big.
Yeah.
So we forget this, and how do we remember in a way that's really meaningful, that impacts our decision making?
Now in the beginning, it's like they say it's like a graph. In the beginning, you're a bit up and down. When you first join Krishna consciousness, 1 minute you think you're like an incarnation of Lord Chaitanya, and next minute you're thinking, well, maybe I'll just bloop. It's like a graph, But after some time, it kind of evens out, as you mature in Krishna consciousness, It's like it takes some time, our condition. The whole process of Krishna consciousness is to change our conditioned nature from material to spiritual. It takes some time. It takes some patience. We're living in a world of an instant now world where, right now is not soon enough. People have lost their patience to struggle. Even people that run music schools I've talked to, and even people that teach dancing in like ballet and things like that, they're having trouble now with students. Students in our modern day, they just don't have the patience to learn a musical instrument, which takes many years, or to learn dancing techniques, or it's just this instant result mentality of the modern day that people have. It's got to be now, or if I can't learn right now, then I don't want to. You know what I mean? So we read that in the scriptures, that our determination, our perseverance has to be tempered with patience. That it doesn't come overnight. It takes some time, to gradually, balance out and develop that more deeper spiritual consciousness and awareness, and become, balanced, in our spiritual life, But it's also, it comes down, also, that we, like I said, just like when you feel a flu coming on, immediately you take some echinacea, you take lots of vitamin C, you take some lemon and ginger drinks, or whatever, So similarly, if you can feel it yourself, that you're not feeling so strong in your spiritual life, you're feeling not so Krishna conscious, and you have to be sensitive towards your consciousness. You may feel that maybe I need to chant better rounds, I need to read more Bhagavatam, I need to take a step back from my services, if it's a Sankirtan service, whatever, and maybe spend more time just reading and chanting, and And I mean, most devotees have had this experience. When you chant really good, attentive rounds, which means and instead of listening to the mind while you're chanting, thinking about so many things, you really focus on listening to the mantra, you get incredible spiritual clarity and strength and in your you know what I mean, in your day-to-day spiritual life. It's incredible, you know. We talked about this the other day about the mind, you know, how I know Burjan Prabhu, when they run these japa retreats, you know, it's one of the biggest obstacles in japa chanting is the mind, you know, kind of. And one exercise they do to slow the mind down and focus on the mantra, they just focus on trying to chant one mantra, the mantra you're chanting right now. Because if you're just focusing on chanting 16 rounds, the mind jumps ahead and starts thinking about all the rounds yet to chant, and you lose your focus. But to slow the mind down, you just focus on chanting one mantra, the mantra you're chanting right now, and you move on to the next mantra, and you just focus on that mantra. You know, it's really powerful, I tell you. And all Sankirtan devotees, they really know that my success in distributing books is it lies on how good my rounds are. We used to see one devotee, Brigu Patti, in the early days. He was a classic. He's one of the biggest book distributors in the world now. But you see him chanting his japa. He's like, Hare Krishna. He's so focused on his japa. It's incredible. But it's also reading the books every day. Prabhupada criticized the devotees. We don't read our books enough. Every day Prabhupada said, you should read at least 1 hour a day. If you don't read, what happens is you start thinking, well, you know, what am I doing here? You know, I'm working, doing all this work. I'm not getting paid. No holidays. What am I doing this for, you know? This is wasting my time, you know? If you don't read the scriptures, you forget what the whole purpose of Krishna consciousness is. You know, why I'm here. What you know, it's like we have to every day read. Actually, the Devamrita Swami makes his book distributors read at least 2 hours a day. 2 hours. And if you sit down, especially if you read aloud, I found that's the most effective. And other people have had the same experience. You read aloud to yourself. It's really powerful. You sit down and read Bhagavatam for 1 hour to yourself. You can feel the effect of it. It's powerful, isn't it? It's amazing. But if you just skip the reading and you get too busy and you don't do the reading every day, you know, it wears you down actually. And the mind can start taking you here, there, and everywhere, you know. Is that okay? Okay. Hare Krishna, Srila Prabhupada ki, Srimad Bhagavatam ki.